Hi, Lisa. I'm your tour guide. I am going to walk you through the material. I will answer questions, but really what I'm going to do is I'm going to be that one piece that's missing from everything that you struggle to learn, which is somebody to say, oh, I struggled with that too, and here's where I found the answer, okay? It makes you a better learner, makes you more independent. Additionally, in this course, I'm going to emphasize that you guys all collaborate with one another. Now, why is that? There's this crazy ass different terms that we use nowadays. In education, they call it 21st century skills. Apparently, there are new skills in the 21st century than there were in the 20th century. So we'll go with that. You have to suspend your skepticism for a moment. And those are, actually, I don't know all of them, but one of them is, you know, you got to be nice to one another. Why? Because you work together more often than in the past. I don't think that that's true, but I'm sorry. But you have to work, you have to learn to work together. You have to negotiate with one another, and you have to learn team problem solving. Why do you have to do that? I don't know. Hey. Not that I have fear. So project-based learning is this emphasis to get all of you to work together. Not all of you necessarily, but small teams. And there's going to be different expertise on that team. And I'm going to collect the expertise and I will assign the teams for the first project. Okay, and then after that, we'll see how the first project goes. This is everything I do in teaching is an experiment. Okay, because I try to emphasize things that we know about in education. So that's the general gist of this class. If you hate that idea, that's cool. You can leave. No judgment. If you're excited about the idea, cool. Me too. I think this is going to be a fun semester. But before we jump into the semester, we get 5 minutes to piss and moan about this room. This room sucks.
It really does.
Yeah, it's hot, isn't it? Okay, we all have to go to Mike Hurley because Mike is a great guy, but everybody is going to him right now, pissing and moaning and asking why they can't get into this one class and can they afford to override or whatever the hell it is. If I go to him, he'll go, yeah, we'll see if we can make it happen, but I haven't heard from any of your students. That's where you guys come in. You guys go to Mike and say, this classroom is whatever, insert whatever descriptor you want in it in any language that you so desire, but you know, make it colorful. Mike has a good sense of humor. See if we can get the ball rolling to get this at least in a smart classroom. How about like just mildly retarded classroom? Okay, this one's ridiculous. So because unfortunately, this is what you're going to have to deal with. I have slides, but you have to deal with my handwriting. I failed penmanship. I apologize for that. I'm unfixable at this moment from this point forward in my life. If you can read this, then you're better than most of my family, because they ask me, what the hell is this card game? The same in this class. It's the thought that counts. So if we can get this room changed, so much the better. I don't know whether it's possible, practical, whatever, but we can make it happen. All right, that's our 5 minutes allotted to bitching about the room. Anybody want to just, yell or something like that? Get it out right now. Okay, move. Syllabus. I gotta open up the syllabus. I can't remember what I told you to do. Yeah, you're soon going to learn the limits of my vision too. Hey, I got it. No. Can't read spring versus fall. Sorry about that. This is 757, right? Fall 2016. Nice. Okay, so what did I promise you? Besides a lot of reading. And the semester is front loaded with reading, okay? So just know that about me, as I try to front load the entire semester, get you to read as much as possible beforehand, so that as the semester winds down and everybody has all of this ridiculous shit that you've got to do throughout the semester, you know, that it culminates in a 20-page paper that the professor doesn't even read. It's what happens around Christmas. None of us are going to sit around reading a 20-page paper. We look at it, we skim it, and go, yeah, good. Yeah, after you've just sweat your life out of trying to get it done. All those deadlines, the semester in this class starts to wane and the demands are less. Okay, I try to play so that play into your favor so that you're not stressed toward the tail end of the semester. So bear with me. The beginning of the semester is front loaded. So please, please, please read. Because if you don't read, you won't understand one word that I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so the demands are, I'm not going to review the readings. The readings I treat you like graduate students or actually like professionals. If you do the readings, all of this makes perfect sense. It's just, I'm trying to organize it for you. That's my job. I'm a tour guide. I organize this material for you so that you can see and go, oh, that's where it all comes together. Okay, you'll notice my reading questions is 1 minute, because I'm going to redirect you to, in graduate school, you cannot read things once. Ever read anything once. You got to read it multiple times. So read it before class, come to class, we'll talk about it, I'll discuss this. You can ask questions during any of this stuff, and you can ask questions about the reading at any time. Okay, you can interrupt me, you can say, Patrick, shut the fuck up. I don't even understand what the hell you're talking about. At which point I'll say, did you do the reading? And you'll go, okay, all right, go back to do the reading, but stay here, take notes. Okay, that moves me over here to, and I'll get more of the syllabus. 2A, take notes by hand. Okay, some of you may hate that idea, but it actually works. It's more effective than typing. Okay, why is it more effective? Because you're actually encoding it better. Okay, there's now enough evidence for it that we don't have to sit there and debate the merits of handwriting versus typing. You will learn this material if you write it down. Write these notes, write any notes. You know, if I tell a funny joke, just put a note in there for encoding. Compare something that you heard from me with something that you're interested in learning. By doing that, that associative learning or chunking will help you retrieve it better. Okay, it's much easier, right? This is for your benefit. I'm not punishing you. I'm not telling you that you can't use a notebook. Just, you're gonna have plenty of time sitting on your computer. Right now, you can take a break, right? The syllabus. Course requirements. I got every bit of free reading for you. I saved you guys like probably 2 or 3 hectobucks, right? That's a lot of money. That's graduate student beer. That's like an infinite supply, right? So because they're free, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily easy. I did select from a whole host of things that I read all summer, and I decided that these were the pieces that fit together the best. And some of them don't look like they fit together very well, but I'm going to talk about why they do. Okay, so first is Bayesian Essentials with R. There are probably 4 or 5 books on R with Bayes as the part of the title. Some are really good, but require a tremendous amount of background knowledge, mostly math. Okay, now I know in psychology, most of you guys went into psychology because you hate math and science. In this class, we'll suspend that hatred for just a semester. Like the book by Albert is a great introduction for the first 2 chapters. And then after that, he's like, okay, we're going in. And he goes in for the kill with like no transition. And immediately he goes in with matrix algebra and integral calculus. And the next thing you know, most of you will probably be looking at it and like flipping through and not reading the equations. Well, with Albert, if you don't read the equations, you don't understand what he's talking about, because that's why that book is really thin. If you speak math, you can say a lot with one simple equation, okay? Now, I'm not going to speak math. I speak English, barely, laced with lots of profanity. That's the New Yorker in me. Yeah, in the Irish, that's all combined together. So what I plan to do is to talk you through some of the rough spots in these books that are not like Albert. Albert doesn't teach you any of this. He just demands that you know it, okay? I chose this Marin and Robert book simply because some of these rough spots. It's not as concise as Albert. If you're interested, download Albert, okay? That's his last name. I don't know what the hell his first, do you know what his first name is? We'll call him John. But don't write that down. So it might not be Jay. So Albert, and I think it's like Introduction to Bayesian Statistics with R or something, or R Statistics with B. Who the hell knows? I don't know. Look for R. It's a Springer book. All the Springer books are available for free. Library, okay? I don't know when that disappears, so do yourself a favor and don't rely on the link. Click on the link and download the book. Stick it on Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever the hell your preference is, and hold on to it, okay? Just in case it disappears. Should it disappear and any one of us has it, we can send it to you, so it's not the end of the world, but try to download it as soon as possible. You can get the Albert book. There are two other Springer books that come to mind. I don't know the exact titles of them, but they are way, way, way advanced. Okay, I recommend that you not read those because you'll just be confused. Flip open the book, read the preface. If the preface says this is for a second graduate student course in Bayesian statistics, immediately close it. Okay, why? Because when they're writing for a second course in Bayesian statistics, what they're not telling you is that second course comes after linear algebra. Comes after probably 4 to 6 semesters of calculus. How many of you have had calculus? Awesome! Woo! For those of you who didn't raise your hand, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Soon you'll learn what the hell that thing is. Okay? It's really simple. Bayesian statistics is really simple. So I'm going to give you language to convert this into something that's useful. Okay? Not math terms, English terms. Okay? But the authors of those books assume that you have all of that background and that you've had a rigorous first course that's largely matrix algebra and integral calculus for Bayesian statistics. Now, why is that? Because Bayesian statistics is not a very simple numerical recipe, okay? Like regression. Regression is very simple. It's very simple because everything comes from the data. Everything comes from the data in regression or in the general linear model as a whole. Pretty much all frequentist statistics come from simple arithmetic operations on the data. Bayesian statistics, it doesn't work that way, okay? A lot of Bayesian statistics is inference and judgments that you have to make about the data and about the parameters that you're interested in, parameters and data, about these things. And because of that, the authors expect a lot from you. This is an introduction to Bayesian statistics. And it's an introduction that is geared toward you. You're my audience. I want my tablet to die. That would suck. So I have organized three books that I think are one resource. that I think are really good. The subjective probability book by Jeffrey is, I think, really good. I think it's excellent. I hope you went through the first 5 chapters. It's an introduction to probability. Without that introduction, conditional probabilities and joint probability distributions will be, I don't know, Greek. So it wouldn't be Greek. It would be Spanish or Italian or whatever the hell you don't speak. Please read that, okay? If you don't, I'm not a guilt person. I grew up in a guilt family, and I've given up guilt, okay? I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, you know. People say that the Irish worked very hard to refine guilt and that the Jews perfected it. I think my family really spit-shined it pretty well. So guilt-free, but just an emphasis on how important it is for you to read ahead of time is that today I'm going to talk about probability theory and how probability theory plays into understanding Bayesian statistics. And today is going to be like one of those YouTube videos, you know, like the introduction to Bayesian statistics, or why the hell should I be in this class? That's today, but after I go through the syllabus. Hey, welcome. Here you go. All right, let's see. So the 2 required books are Bayesian Essentials with R, free. Subjective Probability, the real thing, free. 2 free things. Don't worry, there's more free things to come. Tal Galili put together a wonderful resource for you about learning R. This class, believe it or not, is a class with like 4 topics. The 4 topics, and really it's probably 5. So the topics are R. Everybody know what that letter stands for? Excellent. Okay. But in addition to R, there's bugs and Stan. We'll do a little bit in those, but not a whole lot, because there's a lot that you can do in just R. And what I'm interested in teaching you are the tools so that you can be independent in using Bayesian statistics, okay? If I jump into bugs and Stan right away, it means that you don't learn R at all. Because then you're just typing and copying things and having typos that you can't figure out. And then you'll go to your classmates and say, what the hell am I doing wrong? And they'll say, I don't know. And then eventually you'll find somebody that will tell you, and then you'll go, ooh, that sucked. And that's like 2 weeks later. Now, so I know many of you who and work with me have learned R the hard way. There's only one way to learn R, the hard way. It's just you can make it easier, okay? Because if you do it independently and then come and sit together and say, what am I doing wrong? One of you will point out the mistake and you'll learn together, okay? It'll be quicker. But there's no substitute for using R on your own. There are a bunch of tutorials that you can use. Swirl is one. Do you like Swirl?
It's awesome. It tells you good job.
Yeah. It pats you on the back and says, "That girl, that boy," you know it.
Not quite. Try this.
Oh, really? So
Yeah, it's got more advanced.
Yeah. So R is like topic 1. Resources. There's Swirl. What the hell?
Like the word swirl.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, isn't it like that?
It has like funny arms.
So there's Swirl. Swirl is pretty nice because when you open it up in our studio, it just guides you through a bunch of things. I recommend it. I learned R a long time ago, so I am a terrible resource, mostly because I don't know what you don't know. Okay. I can help you if you get super stuck and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can get you in the right direction, okay? But it's like the poverty of wisdom. Imagine trying to teach somebody without looking at them how to put on a shirt. Pretty freaking hard. And they don't know your language. Because you're talking about, oh, vectors and, oh, where's your vector? And have you done the constructor? And what's the object that you're working on? Huh? Okay, so there's swirl. There's a ton of these online tutorials. Online tutorials. Classmates. Don't burn them out, okay? Don't burn one another out. R is tough. I will grant you that. R is tough. I learned R when R first came out, and it sucked. It was terrible because where I was at the University of Washington, they were deciding to leave SAS behind, and without SAS, I couldn't run anything. So I figured I had to find out something to run my stats with, so I learned R. It's hard. I'm not going to ease you into this and say, it's no problem. I don't want to do that because if you start thinking, it's no problem, I want to light the fire under your ass and say, holy shit, this is going to suck. And then if it's okay, if you find out, hey, it's not that bad, you have a half an hour with your pal Swirl and all of a sudden you know what you're doing. So R is the first part of the class. The second, and it's not part as in it's organized into these parts, but these are the aspects of this class. Second is Bayesian / probability theory. We don't talk a whole lot about probability theory in frequentist statistics. We talk about p-values for about 2 minutes, and we say, this is what it's supposed to be, and this is how you interpret it, and then you go off into the wild, and none of you interpret it correctly. It's okay, don't worry. There are Nobel laureates that can't interpret the p-value correctly, so you're in good company. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing, it's just that you're in good company. So we're going to talk about Bayesian probability theory, and this is something that's fairly novel to you. We're going to talk about not just probability, but probability density functions and cumulative density functions and joint probability distributions. And at the end of this semester, you'll listen to these things, and right now it's like a test pattern. Okay, in your head, you're like, ooh. You haven't heard a thing I said. You just hear lots of these words together. I have no idea what the hell you just said. So this part is another aspect that's independent of R. R is just a tool. This is the content. Okay? Now, there's a lot more to this course than just these two aspects. So I'm not going to bludgeon you with more of this. But what I do want to say, hey, these can be broken down further because, as you can see, R, I've nested in bugs and Stan. Stan, this is a different language than R. It resembles R in some ways, but it's different, okay? Annoyingly different. So you'll have to learn a syntax that's different than this in order to do the more advanced problems, okay? Similarly, with this Bayesian, I've lumped these two together, but they're close enough where we're learning the topic, the content is Bayesian statistics, but it demands that you learn something about probability. I've also nested in here, what else do you need to know? Well, you need to know just a little bit of matrix algebra, just a little bit, a wee bit, just enough so that you can look at something and not like gloss over the equation and flip the page. We're not going to do that anymore. Okay? We're going to look at that equation and we're going to spend like 2-3 minutes saying, what the hell is the author trying to tell us with this equation? So we're going to do that. Okay? We're going to do that together. So a little bit of matrix algebra and of integral and differential equations calculus. A little bit, okay? If you hated math, you won't hate it after this semester, okay? It's not, this isn't a math course, just as much as it's not a basic probability course and it's not a course in R. It's a course in all of these things. That's the problem with Bayesian statistics. And this is the problem that we've talked about as a faculty is how do we, if there's a big push to get all the students interested in Bayesian statistics and to start using these tools, how do we do it so that we have a slow transition? Well, historically, Jim Thompson and I taught this course, this is the 5th instance, I think, of it. We've taught it using different textbooks each time. And we found that the textbooks got thicker and thicker and they got more elaborate and went through way too many details. And if you're really interested at the end of this course to just be able to sit down and learn a tool, applying it to essentially the 611, 612 and regression and multivariate stuff that you've come to learn from the frequentist side, then you should get, what the hell is his name? Krushke. You should get Krushke's book, Doing Bayesian's
Data Analysis, 2nd edition.
Yeah, and there's a 3rd edition coming out. So get that, but get that after the semester. Okay, that's really just, I'm going to set you up so that you can use that book. But we taught Bayesian statistics using that book. Jake, you took the class with that, right? It was tough.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It was brutal. It was brutal. So this is a softer, kinder, gentler introduction where you will be ready to go through all of Krushke on your own or together. Maybe you'll get some new pals here in class, which would be great. Ideally, if you guys weren't in the same lab and didn't know one another, you can become pen pals if you move away, right? You can talk about how wonderful life is post-graduate school. But more importantly, you can figure out who you can talk to about learn and how to continue learning about Bayesian statistics, okay? So this class is multifaceted. There's a lot of material that I don't have to cover, because I'm not going to cover it necessarily. I'm going to guide you through the material, and I'm going to help you help yourself, okay? That's the aim in this class. You will be a much better, more independent learner at the conclusion of this 15 weeks than you were coming in today, okay? That's my promise, all right? Now, I have a question for you. How many people know R? Like, if you had to do an analysis in regression, say, can you read data into R? Can you run just a standard linear model and see the results and plot them? How many? Listen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. You 5, let me see, hold on a second. Cool, okay. 5 teams of 5, which is perfect. You 5, you make up the 5 teams, okay? For now, you're each islands.
Can we all be in one team?
No. Excellent question, Aziz. Very simple answer. No, every team has to have, and this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about differential expertise, okay? And you're going to see the group composition that I am going to create. Okay, so I know all you guys. All right, I know the R users. Spencer, you didn't raise your hand.
I could do that with like a semester of practice.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right. So we have our 5 R people. Okay. So every team gets an R person. Okay. Now some teams may have multiple R people because Spencer, like Spencer's, is very modest. He can do all of that stuff and more. He just doesn't want to admit it. He can't. He's like, no, I definitely can. And Kayla's worked with R a little bit. And HLM and all this, she's very flexible. So she has the ability to apply all of these. So some of the teams will have multiple R people. Okay? That's just the way the world works. Okay? I'm going to try to distribute the expertise. So in addition, I want somebody who's highly conscientious on each team. That is the dot the I, cross the T, the person that I've never been in my life, who follows orders, you know, high conscientiousness. And we'll figure that out, don't worry. I need somebody, and that person is going to be kind of like the ass kicker manager. And then we need people with some content expertise, because every project will require you to come up with some content. Okay? Now, it's not that the art people can't have content, it's that everybody's going to bring their unique bit of expertise, so that everybody on the team has something unique to contribute. And the reason why I want that is I want all of you to work together. I want you to be interdependent upon one another. The project cannot move forward without each person's expertise, each person's contribution. Okay, so we're going to have presentations. We need presenters. It needs to be written up. It needs to be written up, and not in that horse shit. I'm not going to give you like 10 pages. It needs to be double spaced, 1-inch margins and all that, because, hey, I'm human. I got a teenager son who requires some attention after he totaled my car. Don't worry, I got personal stories from this summer. Great. And a new car. So I'm busy. And I can't read 10-page papers, especially 5 of them. You didn't want to write them, and I don't want to read them. Okay? So, deal, right? Exactly. This is why we get along so well, is that we have similar aims. Reduce the harm in each other's lives. So what needs to happen is you need to have somebody writing a narrative about this. Now, this is Bayesian statistics, but you need to be able to communicate Bayesian statistics to somebody who doesn't know jack shit about Bayesian statistics. You need to be able to communicate the findings, your results, your thinking, your decisions, everything. You need to communicate it to people who know nothing about the content, about the analysis, about any of the stuff that you've done. Your responsibility is to communicate that. This is one of the greatest pitfalls with Bayesians. They think everybody else is a Bayesian. Read a paper that reports Bayesian statistics, and you know what you get? You get shit like this. There you have it. Those are the results. See, you can see there, I was right. Yep, you sure were. You were right that I'm not interested in this. So what you have to do is you have to turn this into a story. And that's where, working as a team, you have to figure out what the proper analysis is, what the data are going to be that lead to your analysis, and you need to decide that together. It's not going to fall on the R people. It's not going to fall on the content people. It's going to fall on the entire team. Okay, you're all yoked. So once I create this team, each team works together. The outcome is based upon everybody's contribution. Okay? Because of that, grades will be assigned according to my view of your product, which accounts for, I forgot what my percentages were. These, by the way, are just, swags. You know that, right? Everybody that writes a syllabus, you just have to add everything up to 100. So I'm just sitting there going, I don't know. How about 40, 40, and 20? So where does that come from? So, you guys care about grades. I don't give a shit about grades, okay? Just so that you know, you're in graduate school. Care about learning. Forget about grades. If you care about learning, the grades come. They're easy, okay? So how are you going to be evaluated? Well, let's see. I need a larger font. My font is already huge. All right. Quality of the group product. Ratings assigned by your teammates. Yeah, so don't piss them off. It's very important. Because if you're going to work together to create this product, you have to work together on a team where it's okay to disagree, okay? It's okay to be fairly reticent, but you have to contribute where the team needs you to contribute. If you don't contribute, then the team's going to be pissed off, and they're going to tell you that they didn't think you added much, okay? So work together as a team. And then, 20% is from me, my assessment of your contribution to the final product, and that's going to be based upon your expertise, what you were assigned to do from the team, and what I saw of that in the final product. Okay, so you can read the syllabus about that. Forget about the 80s. I had to come up with numbers, 87 to 100. This is like measuring with a micrometer, marking with chalk, and cutting with an axe. That's about what measurement is in grade assignment. The grade assignment, I've never failed. I don't fail anybody. Don't fail yourself, okay? Just do the work, forget about the grades. There's no cheating. I don't know. You can come up with a way of cheating? That's awesome. If you cut a hole in the wall and you pee into a cup and the cup disappears and a new cup comes, like they did in the Sochi Olympics, you know about that, right? That's the coolest thing ever. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. If you can figure out a way to cheat in this class, go for it. I'd give you an A just for the ingenuity. How about that? Students with disabilities. If you have a disability, please come see me. But if you do have a disability, it's not, you can come and see me. You can offer me the slip or anything like that. I will definitely accommodate you and make sure that your group, whoever that is, makes accommodations for you. Okay, guaranteed. So it's not a problem with that. Oh, I had to put something, communication and lecture cancellation policy. Mason requires gmu.edu email. I don't think I've ever logged into my GMU account. I use Gmail. But because I'm supposed to say Mason uses electronic mail, gmu.edu, to provide official information to students. I do too. That's the email address I have for you guys. So I email you guys, and I don't know what the hell is the difference between Mason Live and gmu.edu? Doesn't it all go to the same thing?
Yeah.
So there's no difference.
It depends.
It depends?
I think so. I think
Shit.
undergraduate students only have the Mason Live, and graduate students will have it links to both.
Okay.
Yeah, I have two separate inboxes. I'll get it either way. But they
Oh, you
go
will?
to places, yeah.
Okay. All right. It just dawned on me that it's the dumbest thing. And why would you use an email address that has more characters? gmu.edu? That's cool. All right. So I had to say that. You can email me if it's something that you don't want to appear on WikiLeaks. Email my Gmail. If you don't mind the powers that be to read about our transactions on email, then email my ridiculous email address. No, there's no T. Now you see why I don't use it? Because I never receive email. When I give out my email address, they're like, "You must have made a mistake." And it never gets to me. But no, there is no T. And now I've gotten to the point where I always say, "There's no T," and they still doesn't get there. So you can email me if it's something that's like of interest to the university, email this. If it's just something of interest to you and you want it showing up on the pages of WikiLeaks or whatever the other media sources are that are interesting, email my Gmail account, okay? And I know I'm not supposed to do this, so I'll erase it after a short bit. That is a come.
What's the rest of the time?
Sorry. Yeah. Just made it worse. Ha! How's that?
All right.
See, I can. I have the capability. That's a 7. So PEM725@gmail.com. Okay. I told you I failed handshake, especially when it counts. Like P. McKnight. Okay, so I'm supposed to tell you. I'm supposed to tell you something else. Oh, Jake, did we get the right office hours and all of that?
What did they say now?
They say
Thursday 1 to.
Thursday 1 to 2.
Yep. And
Is that
just
good?
hey, just so you guys know.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So if you guys want to meet with me after class, just send me an email. On campus, usually from like 1 to 3, so I'm pretty flexible. So just let me know in advance. That's all I ask.
Yeah, but it can't be right after class because we have our mysteries meeting, which you're all welcome to come to. Mysteries, we just sit around, shoot the shit, and talk about science. Okay? And then on Fridays, we go to the pub at 3:30, 3:30, whatever. It's flexible. And we stay there until all the college kids come, or at least I do.
And Al Shabeem.
Oh yeah, sorry. That's the pub. Okay, I think I got everything. Oh, my office hours, supposed to announce that. Thursdays from 1:30 to 2:30, or by appointment. Or we can do Google Hangout if that's a terrible time. What we do, I'm very flexible, okay? Just ring me at this, and you can G-chat me, and we can set up a time, okay? I'm very flexible, and I like not being restricted to one place on planet Earth. So, you know, wherever you are is good for me, okay? So I have to do that. Oh, yeah. Jake, I apologize.
No worries.
Jake Cortuccio, my TA. And Jake is a very nice guy. Unlike me. Okay. I have a tentative schedule. I'm 40% sure that we'll stick to it. Hey, we gotta talk probabilities now.
Less likely than not.
What's that?
Less likely than not.
Yeah, I'm less likely. It's just, I don't know what you guys know and what you guys feel comfortable with, so we're gonna play it by ear. But right now, that's the tentative schedule, right? I should have written P less than 0.5, not p-value as in null hypothesis significance testing, but the probability that we actually stick with this tentative schedule. Plus, we got a hurricane coming. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Do we actually have a hurricane coming?
Yeah, well, it's off the coast of Florida right now. Yeah, it'll peter out. Don't worry about it. anytime I wish for something exciting, it doesn't happen. And then those times when I'm saying, oh, I got a flight, shit, there's a snowstorm coming. Then it becomes snowpocalypse. Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Oh, forgot to mention. Optional readings. On the website, if I could actually open up the website and show you, I can't. But on the website, everybody get where the website is? Okay, good. It's Google Sites. It's Psych 757 Fall 2016. On that website, I will post optional readings, like readings of the day. They're not compulsory. I think that you'll find them interesting. Usually they're bits and pieces by Carl Bialik from the Wall Street Journal, from 538, which I think you'll find interesting because it has to do with sex, drugs, rock and roll, sports, and elections. Can they just go away? We'll talk about Nate Silver and his probability theory applied to voting behavior at some point. Hopefully the election comes and goes and we don't ever have to talk about it. Okay, so that's optional stuff. Attendance, I don't require attendance, but I strongly encourage it because if you stop attending and your class and your teammates on your project attend and they start carrying the load, they're going to get pretty pissed off at you. Okay, so this is a good way of having a little social conformity kind of layered onto my lack of mandates. I don't like mandates. Anytime somebody tells me to do something, I say, fuck you. I am not going to do that. I am less inclined to do it. I told you, I'm very low in conscientiousness. So I don't require that you attend class, but I'm just as much as I encourage you to read, okay? In class, I'm gonna like the cruise director, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about your cruise, where you can get drunk on the Lido deck and not fall overboard. That's my job. My job is to guide you through all of these readings. And if you don't come, you may be fortunate enough to be like Lisa, where Jake sits here and records all of this. Lisa gets to see the side of my head for most of it. You might be fortunate enough to have one of your teammates record this stuff for you, but I wouldn't rely on it. Okay, come where you can talk, see me. You can ask questions if they come up, because you are going to have questions, guaranteed. And I know you probably have hundreds of questions after the first 5 chapters. Jeffrey, one question might be, what? First five chapters, what? Read those. Spend your whatever the holiday is. Let's see. Yeah, L comes before M in the alphabet. This is how I remember this shit. And backwards for holidays. Anybody else remember it that way?
Just go with the academic.
Wait.
L.
Yeah,
You know, if you could buy the
Labor Memorial. So
you could buy
memorial.
the school year.
I just go by the calendar. Yeah, so it's Labor Day. No, fuck. It is Labor Day.
Yes. If you go
See how good it works?
It's Memorial Day. You go January to December.
Yeah, I
L
can't
and
do
then
that. Yeah, I can't do that. My year has to start in January.
Yeah.
But an alphabet is
I know
alphabet.
that.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
So it's flipped.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He was saying.
No, it's flipped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is topic number 3.
Yeah, this is topic number 3. How do you remember vacations?
What's
So-
the probability that Patrick will get it
Well,
right?
but if I get enough time, I can get it. Read it this weekend. You know, as I say to all of the students in my classes, pour yourself a big glass of wine, and by the tail end of the reading, you'll be really happy. Hopefully you're not an angry drunk. Because if you are, you should not drink when you're reading, because then you'll be pissed at me and you'll say, God, you asked me to read this No, I want you to be happy when you read this. So reward yourself. If alcohol doesn't do it, chocolate. I don't care. Choose your poison. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever the hell does it for you. But do it while you're reading so that there's some positive. Okay? There may not be a lot of retention towards the tail end, but you want remember Freeman principle? Freeman principle, you pair something that has a higher probability with something that has a lower probability. You do that, you're more likely to then do the reading. You got to read these 5 chapters because this is the introduction to probability theory, the shit that you never learned about. Okay? Remember, this is like part 2B, which is, I don't know, there's like 80 parts to this class, but this is essential because when I start writing formulas up here with probabilities, you're going to look at them and go, I have no idea what he's talking about. Okay. I'll wait till Aziz gets back. He's filling up his water because I want an honest, totally reactive survey. This is not unobtrusive measures. I'm going to ask you whether you did the reading. I want you to be honest. This is guilt-free. Remember, I gave up guilt. So think about it. Think back in the recesses of your brain about whether, do you have any clue about who Jeffrey is? Come on, Aziz. They don't need to think too long. Because if most of you didn't do the reading, okay, I'm not going to hit you with probability theory right away. Hey, Aziz.
Yeah.
Did you do the reading?
No.
See, that's the kind of honesty I'm looking for. Okay, let's see, show of hands. How many people did the reading?
I read the
I realized I didn't know.
No, wait. This is like pregnancy. You're either pregnant or you ain't pregnant, okay? I'm not asking who's pregnant now. Yeah. Who did the 5 chapters of reading? Okay, the minority. The minority that did them get the weekend off. That's pretty cool, okay? You might want to skim them though a little bit or read ahead, okay? Highly recommend you read ahead because the reading load gets big if you procrastinate, okay? This first one, it's a mulligan. Off, but I understand mulligans. Read this stuff, especially if probability theory is novel to you. You really need this because that Jeffrey book puts probability theory into really simple ways of thinking about it, like almost like Venn diagrams, but he does it in these 2x2 matrices, and he tries to make it so that it's much more graphical. You don't have to rely on just that, or if you have an alternative intro to probability, the Khan Academy is one that provides, I think I even have, do I have that link?
I have it saved. I did that instead of the reading.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
After the first page, I was like, oh.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So
I can send it.
yeah, Aziz, that would be great. The readings that I select aren't like the readings that you must do. It's the content in the readings that you must understand, okay? If you can find something that's better for you, great. That's part of learning, to be a self-directed and self-managed learner. I get irritated. I love the Khan Academy, but it moves too slowly. And I'm like, come on, can you speed it up? And I learned, Amanda, I think, told me about this, maybe Lisa, you can turn the YouTube thing onto like twice the speed. So you've got like Alvin and the Chipmunks talking to you about probability theory, which is kind of cool. I've never talked to chipmunks before, but I've learned from them. So I would recommend that you do that. And Aziz will send me the links and I'll post them. But if any of you find any alternatives, that you thought, wow, this was great. This was much better than whatever crap I assigned. Great, okay? That's okay. I have no stake. I'm not the author, and even if I were the author, I wouldn't be sensitive about this. I want to know what works for you. So if you have a video, if there's a podcast, I don't care, whatever. Whatever works for you, send it to me and I will post it. Okay? Very important that it's the content that gets covered and not just the pages. Okay? The pages are irrelevant. If you can find something that maps on perfectly with the content that I've provided, awesome. Okay? So, so the readings, if you are going to read them, and I recommend that you read them or their equivalent. There's an alternative book that I didn't recommend, but has an excellent, excellent primer on basic probability theory, and I recommend this to all my classes because I think it's wonderful, is The Cartoon Guide to Statistics by Larry Gonick and Smith. The Cartoon Guide to Statistics sounds really silly, but it's excellent. It's a graphical display of probability theory, and they talk through some very simple problems, but the simple problems then lead eventually to Bayes' theory. Okay, Bayes' theorem is essentially what we're moving toward in this class, and we're going to talk more about Bayes' theorem and the probability notation and all of that throughout the entire semester. So the Cartoon Guide to Statistics provides that for you in a, I don't know, what I call toilet reading. You know, you can sit on the toilet and flip through the thing and, I don't know, 5 trips to it, or, you know, a bad bout of dysentery and you're through the whole thing. I just swam in the rivers around Manhattan. I'm sure I've got a few bugs in me. So some dysentery is on my head. So reading can be anything. Okay. Please, please, please attend to the content, less to the page numbers and all that. Again, that's one of the reasons why I say that this is a tentative schedule. I don't believe in the idea of we must cover. That doesn't fly. I don't care about covering stuff. I care about you learning. So you guys dictate. This is my scientific wild ass guess about how fast you guys can learn. This may be wrong. Okay, that's why I assign probability of 0.4 to us having this schedule. You guys may be way faster at some point and then way slower at others. Okay, I don't want to just accelerate for the sake of accelerating or slowing down for the sake of slowing down. What I want to do is I want to make sure that you feel comfortable moving forward and moving forward with the material based upon your mastery of it. The aim of this course is mastery of the fundamentals. Okay, mastery of the fundamentals. Doesn't mean that you're going to be like the Bayesian data analyst for your lab and all of that. It means that you'll know how to learn how to apply Bayesian statistics to way more complicated models as you progress through the class. Okay, and where you terminate, where you end is going to be kind of like regression. Okay, that's the aim. Due to that really complicated, because that's the third project. I'm going to talk about this in a second. If we terminate at that, you'll probably have a pretty good idea about R, about how to apply bugs and Stan. They're essentially the same language, but they have different engines. Okay, Stan is much faster and a little bit more flexible than bugs or whatever the hell they call it nowadays. So you'll have a pretty good understanding of this, and you'll have a much better understanding about how to apply Bayesian statistics to the problems of multivariate, predictive, or explanatory, or inferential models. And you'll understand the difference between those as we progress through the class. Okay? And in so doing, because you'll have followed some of my basic primer ideas about matrix algebra and integral calculus, that you'll at least be able to look at the equations rather than them, you know, burning holes in your eyes. You'll be able to look at them and you'll be able to interpret what the author's intent of using that equation rather than writing out all of this. Equations are shorthand, and you'll soon learn to love them. Because right now, you got to read 50 pages in order to understand one equation. That sucks. If you could just understand that one equation, you could skip 50 pages. That's the aim. Okay? So that's what we're doing. I forgot to mention our 3 projects. So we have 3 very vague projects, deliberately so. And in your teams, you're going to team up to actually create data, find data, don't collect data. If you've already collected data, cool. But the outcome of the univariate project is essentially a null finding for a single parameter, okay? For a single variable. Parameter, variable. We'll talk about the distinction shortly. First project, univariate. Second project, bivariate. And the third project is multivariate. That essentially runs the course through 611 and 612, but from a Bayesian perspective. Okay, now the reason why I'm not giving you all of the details for what to do is because that's what you and your team, you'll be figuring out what storyline you want to make, what data you're going to use, what analytic tool you're going to use. You can use R or Stan, or you can use Python, I don't care. Any tool you so desire, okay? It's just that there are some tools that are a lot easier to use and more flexible. I would recommend, if at all possible, unless you're a Python programmer today, meaning you don't need help with Python. You can write Python code from the top of your head. If you can do that, then you probably want to carry on with Python because Stan has Python hooks. You can call Stan from Python. Okay? So a lot of these tools are not necessary to use R, but I recommend that you use R because R has a lot of built-in functions that make your life way easier. Python, you got to write code for every single problem, and that sucks. Okay. R, way more flexible. You can use one line of code. One line of code will produce the output that you desire. Plus, there are built-in plotting functions within R. So there are generic functions within R that make plotting of the results super easy. Okay. I recommend R, but again, I don't mandate anything. If you can show me output using Python, if you want to write it in C, go for it. I don't care. It'd be arduous. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I believe that Stan also interfaces with MATLAB.
Yes.
And then the other thing to note too is that Bugs only works on Windows, and Jags is the equivalent, I believe, for Linux and for Mac.
Yeah.
They're very, very similar syntax.
Yeah, the syntax for all of these are very similar. There's some gotchas in Stan right now, which is pretty freaking nutty. But if you really, really, really want to learn Stan, take a weekend and go through the Stan exercises. It takes about a weekend to go, well, I don't know. It took me a weekend to go through the Stan exercises and like a case of beer. Made me very happy. I'm a happy drinker. Those are the 3 projects, okay? There's no detail other than single variable, 2 variables, and multiple variables. All right, I've talked enough. I'm gonna sit down and field questions. Bless you. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so in the reading, why I quit early was the logical equations. Can you clarify just what some of those symbols mean?
Yes?
Okay, the Tetris piece L, sideways L, what is that?
Oh, no. I'm going to give you resources
Oh,
to go through all that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's formal logic isn't necessary. For some of those readings, for one of the chapters in Jeffrey is definitely necessary, but he explained 2 of them. I believe he explained the logical imperative and conjunctions. Other than that, I think he skipped a few necessary steps.
Contradiction. Negations, disjunctions.
Yes.
That's a formal logic.
Yeah. So he skipped a few of these, but I don't think he skipped a whole lot. But I will give you all of the. I will give you a resource. Okay. It's less important to master that. More important to figure out where the holes are in changes. This, as you said, I was good all the way up until this point. And what I want to do is I want to show you how to get unstuck. Okay. But the key to that, formal logic symbols.
Formal logic. Okay.
Oh, what is that? Hold on, I gotta write this down. Have you guys ever been here? Oh, that's totally sarcastic and the worst thing ever. Anybody that got a computer open and connected, just.
That's not my students in response to their questions.
Oh, this
Sorry, no.
is an L. LMGTFY dot.
Let me move on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You type in a phrase and then you save the link and send the link. And then when they open it, like types it in Google and says send.
And then hit send and then.
Wait, so when they click on the link, it will open Google, type it in, and send it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It Googles it for you.
It Googles it for you. It says, let me Google that for you. See, was that so hard?
Yeah.
Shane, that will not be my default response.
All right, yeah.
It's just that's a minor piece. The way bigger piece is the probability. And it's not really symbols, but it's just like what the vernacular is, and we're going to talk about that today because it's essential that you guys know some of the rudimentary things because they're very hard to look up. I've learned that, like rudimentary probability theory stuff is available, but then the symbols are not always. Matrix algebra or linear algebra, you have to go through all these stupid examples in order to say, oh, that's what that is? You're kidding me. Very simple. Okay, so I am going to talk about that. Other questions? I told you the reading questions were going to be 1 minute. What else? Questions about the syllabus? How many people still give a shit about their grade? Oh, I haven't beaten that out of you. It's okay. Who's going to care? You do right now, but that'll go away.
Same group for all 3 projects? Same groups?
No. Oh, yeah, good question. No, I'm gonna break up the groups just so that everybody has an opportunity to meet and greet with other people and to work with them. Yeah, the first group, I think what I'll do is Jake and I will confer about getting you together because you guys have to fill out a questionnaire. I have a long, elaborate questionnaire with no consent form whatsoever.
For classroom learning. You don't need it.
That's right. I'm exempt.
Like Judge Dredd.
I even get that reference. Okay, so no, the first group, the first 5 groups will be set up by me. And then the second groups, I'll allow you guys to shift a little bit. And then maybe the third group, I don't know, we'll see. I've never done this before.
That's reassuring.
Yeah. Is your parachute packed? Yeah. Have you ever done that before? No. Let's do it. Low stakes. Low stakes. No questions, concerns, bitches, gripes, moans?
Not right now.
Hmm?
Not right now.
No,
We'll update
don't
you.
worry, they'll be coming.
So when, should we only ask a question in class if we fail to Google it? And when,
No, and if it comes up, that's fine. But please do make an effort to try to answer your questions ahead of time. Not because I don't want to answer them, but again, the emphasis is I really want you to try to learn to be somewhat independent. Okay? It's the nature, unfortunately, that's the nature of Bayesian statistics, is there are just not a lot of resources. It is, I'm trying to prepare you guys for when the class disperses after 15 weeks. 15 weeks is a short period of time to be together. So we're together for this 15 weeks, and then afterwards, I want you to be as independent as possible. Now you'll have friends, classmates, and all that you can confer with. But even then, somebody may just drift off into the Netherlands, and say, I'm not really interested in this anymore, and I can't help you, or I'm too busy, or my paycheck takes precedent, or whatever the hell it is. And so what you'll have to do is you'll have to lean more on not just Google, but on resources that we pull together. Okay, it's one of the things that I think when Jake took the class, I don't know how many semesters ago, years ago, Jim and I were not as concerned about pulling together resources because we thought, here's a textbook and the textbook will be awesome. You guys can just lean on this textbook. Well, the textbook just keeps getting, the third edition apparently is going to be 700 pages.
What?
Yeah, printed textbook. I don't know, it's probably on like Bible.
Bible size?
Bible. Onion skin that you can see through the pages. That turned out not to be a good idea because you only learned what Krushke said you had to learn. And nobody, I don't know, many people, Jake's probably the exception, although maybe you and Dan, that not many people were able to take what Krushke said and turn yourself into more of a self-directed data analyst using Bayesian statistics. This class, I'm going to teach you kind of like the fundamental skills so that when I start discussing Git sampler and things like that, you go, oh, that makes total sense. Do a canned package, which was Krushke's idea. And you'll be much more of a self-monitored and self-directed learner. Okay, that's the aim. So the long answer to your question, but try to Google as much as possible ahead of time. Some shit you just might not figure out what to do. And copying things, I've tried this before, like with symbols in a PDF, you copy it and you paste it into Google and say, what the hell does this mean? Mm-hmm. And the symbol comes up as like a wingding or something like that, so it doesn't always work. But you can find it in like those special codes. I'm not a Windows user, I'm a Linux user, so we have if you right click, you can select insert special code and you can select from all these things. So you can do it.
So I know you were mentioning, let's see, so you unless you're like really proficient in Python, you should like go with like R and stuff. Oh, yeah, I know like Jake mentioned you can pull R into MATLAB. Do you have any specific resources for? I mean, like, MATLAB? I'm actually pretty proficient in MATLAB, but
cool.
I noticed that the structure, yes, it was the same, but often enough the different functions were different.
Yeah, the functions within MATLAB that you would use to pull the data from Stan are different than in R. The generic functions like plotting and organizing your data are way different between MATLAB. And incidentally, MATLAB, way, 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 way better than R in any type of matrix operations. R sucks in matrix operations. It's terribly slow.
So I know they have like statistics toolboxes for MATLAB. Would you almost be better to do with that, or?
Yeah, if you feel comfortable with it. It's not that I would say that it's better. It's that if you already have mastery over that tool, go for it. And here's where it's ideal for you to be paired up with another R person is that you might be able to teach them a little MATLAB and they can teach you a little R. So MATLAB, way better for matrix operations than R. It's not even close. MATLAB will do matrix operations in nanoseconds. R may take hours. It's graphics. MATLAB is a toy.
No,
Exactly. Anybody that uses MATLAB will say the graphics in MATLAB suck. Are spectacular. So for publication graphics and things like that are. So maybe you use MATLAB, export the results, and then use R for graphics. I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah. I like the fact that you guys have different levels of expertise, and that if you get paired with an R user and somebody else has a different background, that you guys can all work together and talk about it. Okay.
It's great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I'm not tool dependent. I'm just telling you that in R, if you don't want to use Stan, because Stan can be a little tricky at times. Well, Kelvin says it's a lot easier. I don't find it's a lot easier. There are basic packages or libraries within R that will do the same thing that Stan will do in one line. But in Stan, you got to construct all of the data stats and all that shit. It can be a little awkward. So R has the flexibility that you can just go back to R and use like a very simple canned routine. Whereas in MATLAB, you don't have that opportunity, which is okay. In Python, you don't have that opportunity either. You got to program from scratch. Problem with Python is it's very difficult to create generic algorithms. So you have to write the algorithm. Now you learn the basis for the algorithm very well, okay, in Python, which brings me to, hold on a second. There is a great resource if you're interested, and I think I put this in optional stuff. Think Bayes by Alan Downey. If you have any background in Python, look at Think Bayes. It's great. It's free. And I love authors who write books and give them away. I'd give my book away for free because I only make like $30 a year from it. It's owned by somebody else. Whereas Think Bayes, doing Bayesian data analysis, the second edition by Krushke, is free for you guys. I put the link in here. Somebody, did you send me that?
No.
Or did somebody sent it to me? It's free. Beware. He's got kind of this really weird sense of humor. I need a lot of drinks in order to get through Krushke. I've read both versions of Krushke, and some of them occasionally after a few drinks I laugh out loud. But most of the time it's like.
His videos are worse too.
Oh yeah, he looks like a serial killer. It's really.
His voice is just creepy.
Yeah, I mean I may look homeless, but he looks like a serial killer. There's a blog on Bayesian analysis. It's really good. You should take a look at it. I'd highly recommend just following. I don't know if you guys how you follow blogs, but you should follow it because this person, Fabian Goblander, does a really nice job of pulling together resources and talking about the how and the why of Bayesian statistics. And lastly, in terms of reading, I have a huge number of articles. If any of you are doctoral students and want to do like Bayesian statistics as one of your comps sections or something like that, look at this. I have the link 5. Many Bayesian articles available for your reading pleasure. Go through it. I think there's a few hundred. And courtesy of Jake and a few other people, Dan Blaylock, have helped me pull together all these resources so that it's on my Google Drive. It's pretty massive and they're all PDFs. So take a look if you're interested. I will also, as I said to you before, post a bunch of things. that I think you might find interesting. All right. Let's take a break. And then when we come back, we have a period of time where I'm going to go over the vernacular, nomenclature, jargon, and then we'll be done. Ready, break. Woo.
Good start.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Yeah,
I haven't pissed off anybody yet.
If you know.
Yeah, that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are like packing their bags and stuff.
Is there a reason why you prefer the Barry book?
No, I love Barry. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, Barry book is the singular best resource for learning. It's not hard to tie to R. That's the headache.
Because I read some of the chapters of the summary.
I love that one.
It's repetitive and
No, but
you really lays down everything. When I was, I kind of was familiar with it. When I was going through Jeffrey was even though I read that.
I find
I've had to actually pull
the
on.
Jeffrey book to be a better primer on basic probability theories.
I'll have some time now.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no better resource than Barry.
Well, I'm actually reading that person.
The end of the book is like $100.
Just like sometime soon. Let me just like.
Okay, cool. Just send me an email.
Struggle with this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sounds good. Thank
In
you.
the university, I talked to Susan Ridley, and I said, can I post the Barry chapters? And she's like, if you get caught, it would be bad. 'Cause my students scanned in the entire book. I didn't do it. So at the individual level, maybe that's when we could be. Can I ask you to say something about Barry?
I scanned it.
Yeah. If I do it, I'm in deep shit.
Yeah, because I wanted to send the book to a few people, but
Yeah. No, please do.
I thought that maybe you preferred the Jeffrey book or something.
No. Jeffrey book I thought was quick and dirty in 5 chapters. Barry covered in 2.
Okay.
But it was free. I had it. It's the only thing is the copyright. I love Barry. I think it's great.
Okay.
I have a lot of the Barry exercises written in R. I've been sort of slowly, painstakingly doing that. I've talked to Barry several times and said, I'm really interested in doing another edition, but doing it in R instead.
Yeah.
Sorry. He said he's retired.
Okay.
Not doing a whole lot of stuff. His son, I think it is, but he's really never making money. Because back then.
Yeah.
Now I think it's a lot better situation.
Also, there.
So yeah, let's if you're willing to do that.
You don't
Yeah.
know about
You don't check this and all that stuff.
I was just wondering.
No, I mean, it's go ahead.
Yeah, no worries.
So,
Lisa, don't tell Susan that we spoke about this, please.
Yeah,
Please.
I don't know if you're here. Oh, you know what? I think Jake is reporting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so,
Yeah, no, okay. So, yeah, I'm just, I'm
yeah, that makes sense.
But again, I love that. Yeah, I think it's the best part of it's just that I was all the way. And then I was like, hey, what's I had 3 copies of it myself too. Thinking, They sold one of them for $125. They sold another one for what? $10 cheaper. I think you need to know about these. And you see them reviews on Amazon?
Yeah.
Not so good.
Really?
Everybody thinks yellow. I don't agree with you.
Now, the government book that I sent was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And after this course, you should get
So is it a package or?
It's a standalone. Just like ours. It's in its order and so you should get samples. Get a sample or it is, you don't know what works for who. Works for you. Then get samplers away from get out and more by random out what the multivariate distribution look like, where the maximum local get samplers for kind of mapping out. So think of this like, imagine you were a photographer and you couldn't necessarily travel. Yes, so what you do is you have shoot a sample. And this sampler is a very good. And this doesn't do it so well because
almost like
no, it's not so. I used to do this in science. Everything R doesn't work. R has I can tell you. It's done. Anybody see what your buddy's missing?
Yeah.
You'll see. All right. All right, that's it. Good. Right. Anybody missing one of their buddies? Look around. Anybody missing? Cool. All right. So that'll be the good part about being on teams. Is you look around at your teammates. If any of them have been left on the mountain, we'll know. Okay. So I do want to talk about. Are you kidding? Okay. I feel like I'm backed up against this. Better to pull than to push. Sorry, guys. Okay. Everything you're going to read is going to have symbols. Sorry. Most of them are going to be pretty simple to understand, at least initially, but you got to keep them in order, okay? So the first symbol that you're going to see a lot of is this theta character. And theta is kind of weird in that they're parameters, okay? And what are those parameters? They can be all sorts of things. Crap. You're going to see this. You're going to see this, unfortunately, a lot, but soon you're going to come to realize that it's nothing, it's not that sophisticated. It's actually pretty simple. But I'm going to talk about each one of these pieces immediately, and then I'll piece them together, and then you'll say, that's it. Okay, so theta are parameters, and parameters can be things like means, variances, probabilities, but their parameters are unobservable. Okay, they're characteristics that we wish to make inferences about from our data. Now, either the data that we have always screw this up. Either the data we have or the data we don't have that we wish to predict. Okay? So it's either directly observed data or unobserved data that could be observed. Okay? Key piece to this. This is unobservable. Okay? These are parameters. You can't like see a mean. You must infer a mean. You can't see a variance. You can't see variance. Not a variance, but you can't see variance. You must infer it. But in data, you can definitely make observations, right? So we're all empirical scientists. All that means is that we make observations and we record those observations and we put them into some sort that we then analyze. Okay, that's these things. Okay, so these things, these are considered to be outcomes. Okay. These are outcomes. Now, I know you guys are looking at me like, are you kidding me? We're talking about X and Y at this point? Yes, because this is the traditional nomenclature or language that you're going to see throughout all of the readings. Now, occasionally they will put different symbols in, but they pretty much mean the same thing. When you see Greek letters, think parameters. Okay? When you see Roman characters, think observables. Letters, in other words, if you're familiar with the letters, these are observables. Now we have, okay, and we have explanatory variables, X's. You've learned that they are called predictors. In Bayesian statistics, they can be predictors, but you don't always want to predict. That's why, broadly speaking, we call them explanatory variables. These X's can be used to predict Y hats. That's what we call that. Those are Y hats. They can also be used to explain what we've already observed. Okay, the Y's. Okay, makes sense? Now, these are individual vectors. Okay? You guys are familiar with vectors and matrices. You just don't know it unless you've had it before. But you've all seen an Excel or an SPSS data set, right? And in that data set, you have something like this, right? A spreadsheet. And you have rows and you have columns. Rows, columns. Okay? Always remember RC cola. Anybody had RC cola in their lives? Yeah. Okay. RC cola. Rows and columns. RC cola. Anytime you see 3x4 matrix, you know there's 3 rows and 4 columns. Rows first, columns second. This is a matrix, okay? A vector is just that, okay? That is what we call a column vector. And that's a row vector. Generally speaking, in statistics, when somebody represents something as a vector, they represent it as a column vector. Okay? Column. Think of your data sets, right? Think of your SPSS or Excel data sets. You typically have your observations, right, your subjects or whatever the hell you have, as rows, And then the variable names represent the columns, right? Those variable names are these guys here. Some of them are what you've learned to be dependent variables. We call them in Bayesian statistics, we call these outcomes. And others you call predictors or factors or independent variables or whatever. And they're all the same thing. Okay, so I'm trying to tie this stuff into stuff you already know. Okay, I know everybody of you, each one of you has a fund of knowledge, and if I'm saying something and you go, whoa, I don't even understand that, just ask me and I'll see if I can tie it back to something you know. I know you all know that. But this might be a little bit novel. Rows and columns. So this is a matrix, okay, represented by these guys, okay? You'll notice in my colorful way, I created bold letters and they're uppercase. If they're uppercase and bold, they represent a matrix. So they have rows and columns. So these guys have rows and columns. Now you know this because you can have multiple predictors in a regression model, right? So you have multiple predictors in a regression model. Those multiple predictors would be considered an uppercase bold X. Those are explanatory variables that will help you either explain or predict outcomes. Okay? But they are matrices. These or plural matrices. Okay? So anytime you see these, think rows and columns. Okay? The sooner you get into the practice of thinking rows and columns, the better. Now, why am I going through all of this stuff? Is because you see a lot of the vernacular in this using these crazy things that you start looking at and going, whoa, what the hell was that? Okay. I'm going to call this A. This is vector A. And I'm going to call this B. And there's 4 here, so there's, I'm going to make it color here. Okay. And let's just call this guy A. Right. So you see that? So we can represent each one of these by a lowercase letter is a vector, or a lowercase letter and a vector, right? But in R doesn't care whether it's a column vector or a row vector. It's just a vector, okay? Generally speaking, though, in Bayesian statistics, this is the way we envision vectors, okay, as column vectors, okay? It's going to come in handy when you start thinking about it. All right. I'm going to see if I can be reminded about some of the operations I want to go through. Ooh. I really need a smarter room. Yeah, okay, I'll be back. Okay. Before I go through matrix algebra, let me finish up with these things, and then I'm going to talk about why it's so important to be able to differentiate between this, this, and this. Okay, ready? This is something that you're going to see a lot of, okay? And this little thing in the middle just says that there's a space there, okay? So this P is a lowercase p, okay? And the lowercase p represents a probability density function. Okay? Lowercase p represents a probability density function, also known as a cumulative density function, also known as a distribution. Okay, you'll see these terms interchangeably used. They mean the same thing. Okay, this is a probability density function. It's a probability density function that you're well aware of. It's been beaten into your senses for a long time, and you soon realize that you can recount this with ease, right? Because we have observed parameters, right? And then we have inferred parameters, right? So we have population parameters, we have computed parameters based upon those distributions. That distribution is what this thing refers to, okay? This is a point estimate, a singular probability, okay? PR is typically used for like the probability that I will stick to my tentative schedule is 0.4. That is a point prediction. So that is a probability of a singular event. Or in case of my tentative schedule, a series of events, okay? The distinction between this should produce what we call a scalar. See these? A scalar is that. Is a single cell. So when you highlight a single cell in Excel or in SPSS, what you're highlighting is a scalar. Now, a scalar in Bayesian statistics is a numeric value. We use numerics here. Okay, so the scalar is, and I'm gonna slowly but surely wean you off of SPSS because whatever SPSS uses is almost invariably incorrect. They have these ridiculous things like there's a scale and all that. Forget that. A scalar in matrix operations is simply a singular cell. And it can be a numeric, and that numeric has to be something that is logical in your inquiry. Okay, it could be a 1, it could be a 1.6, it could be a 10 million. Doesn't really matter. Okay. This is what this refers to. Scalar. This refers to, could be this, could be a lot of things. Okay. But generally speaking, it's not going to be a scalar. It cannot be. Unless it is a uniform probability where every value has the same probability. You'll soon learn that that rectangular probability density function is the one that represents our greatest level of uncertainty. We'll talk about that a little bit. That is supposed to be two parallel lines, this one parallel to the x-axis. Again, not only am I a horrible writer, but I'm a terrible artist too. So those two lines are parallel, and this represents an equal probability for every observable value along the x-axis. So that's where you can have a scalar for this probability because it's uniform. Every probability has the same, or every value has the same probability. This is a point prediction, always a scalar. This can be this, or this. Many things. Okay? But it is a density function generally. Which leads me to this thing. Okay. This thing is usually more ornate, but you know, as you probably have seen, well, not terribly ornate. This probability density function of this parameter could be a regression parameter, it could be a probability, doesn't really matter, it could be anything. Anybody know what this stands for? Take a wild guess. Everybody but Jake. My TA isn't allowed to take guesses.
Some Greek version of the number of a population.
Yeah, it seems like it, right? Yeah, but it's less cryptic than that. What's this thing?
Normal distribution.
Hmm.
Oh.
Cool, huh? There are others. There's like that doesn't make any sense. Okay. A gamma function, gamma distribution, fourth theta given alpha and beta. Okay. And also I have a beta function. There are all these different distributions. What this is saying is that there's a distribution. Wow, that's a really fat B. What it's saying is that this is a distribution. And the distribution is normal for theta given. That's that pipe. Mu squared. Mean variance. Okay. These are the two parameters that define, that characterize, right, a normal distribution. There are two others. We don't pay attention to them too much, right? So these two are define the standard normal.
How do you read the squiggly?
Oh, so we say that this is just read it as approximate. Yeah. So it's never. There are other things that you can look at. Try not to get too confused about this, but occasionally you can say, and you'd see this as this probability density function is defined by, or defined as, a normal distribution. Now, you would say this if you actually created a function with a, I don't know, seemingly infinite sampling distribution, where you said this probability density function for my modeling is going to be defined as a normal distribution. But more often than not, because we're using finite small samples in all of our sampling procedure, it's just that it approximates a normal distribution. Okay.
So is it a coincidence that that's the squiggly used in R, or is that the same symbol?
Same symbol. No, I don't know what the logic is in R. I don't think it's not because it's approximate. It's because that's the formula of the S language. Yeah.
Did you also say that PR could be any numeric value?
Yeah, it's probability. So it's a point estimate probability. So probabilities range from 0 to 1.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Anything between that.
Anything between
I
that.
thought you'd said any number.
Oh, well, it can, if it's unestimable, it can give you like imaginary numbers,
Okay.
right? But we're not gonna go in there. We're only gonna stick to reality in this class. Yeah. All right, so everybody following me, what I've got so far? Yeah.
Question, what's the squiggle squared name called?
Sigma squared, this is
Sigma,
variance. Yeah, so,
I just forgot what it was called.
yeah. So, yeah, sigma squared, mu, people, so. Probably can't read that anyway, but it's okay, it's close enough. So, anytime I try to correct my writing, it doesn't work. So you'll notice that all three of these are parameters, but they're parameters. This is the parameter of interest, and these are the parameters that relate to that. Okay. Everyone follow these so far? Okay. Okay. Yeah, Gonna get rid of him. And let me Google that for you. Okay, I want to make sure. Let me just see here. I'm already forgetting my to do. Come on. Addition, subtraction, transposing, right, okay. Yeah, let's start with A. Okay. I'm going to show you the way I represent matrices, vectors and matrices, because I find it's the easiest freaking way. Stuff. Now, I learned matrix algebra a long time ago. And I don't use it a whole lot, but I remember just enough that I can easily read any matrix operation, okay? And you will too. All right, so I'm gonna, instead of putting these little dashes to represent how many observations or how many elements I have in my vector, I'm just gonna represent them as rectangles, okay? You'll soon realize that I'm incredibly lazy when it comes to writing because my handwriting sucks and I don't like to write a lot. So I'm going to represent, this is actually a column vector, okay? So suspend your disbelief. There are actually lines that go across here that represent lots of different elements within this vector. And I'm going to call this A, okay, not bold, just regular lowercase a. And I'm going to show you a magical operation that I can take A and turn A into something that's different than A as a column vector. I can put this little thing, it's a T, an uppercase T. Anytime you see this, immediately you should envision this. Okay, I'm going to show it to you in slow motion. Imagine that this were a matrix, okay, and I draw a diagonal line, okay, across the matrix. And what I do is I take, it's like, this is like a hot dog that you've stuck on a skewer, thank you. And you turn the skewer, but the way you've stuck the hot dog in makes no sense. Because you've taken the skewer and you've put the hot dog on like this. Okay? Again, suspend disbelief. If you were in a rush, you had too many beers and you were just damn hungry and you didn't want to eat bologna, which is a hot dog not cooked. So then you take the skewer and you turn it. So what's going to happen? Well, this hot dog is going to turn up this way, right? Okay, so what's going to happen over here? When I take the skewer and I turn it, it's going to turn this into that. Okay, so I'm actually flipping this thing around at 45. Doing that, I'm turning this T called transposition or transpose. When I transpose A, I'm turning a column vector into a row vector. Now, many people, you could probably look at me and say, why the hell would you ever do that? Pretty cool, actually. You're going to see some mathematical operations, and you look at it and you're going, holy shit, I'm going to do everything in matrix operations from now on. Okay, so you see that? Pretty simple, right? All I've done is I have taken A, and I've put a superscript of T, and I've turned A into A transposed. So A went from a column vector to a row vector. Yep.
Does that work both ways?
Yes. Yep. Because if I took A transpose, right, and let's say I no longer want to call him A transpose because that's really long. and I call him B. Okay? If I take B and I transpose B, same thing, right? The hot dog is askew right now, and I turn the skewer, and he's going to go back there, right? So transposing and transposed means that it will go back to the original.
So flipping it up instead of down means that the first value in the column becomes the first value in the row instead of the first becoming 10.
Yes. So yeah. So if I let's put lines in it just so that we can keep track of it, right? And this is A1, A2, A3, and A4, right? And I'm glad you brought this up because this is really what I'm leading to. Actually, I don't want to. That's too many, and I'm too lazy. A1. Right. So yeah, A1 remains still number one, right? But A2, instead of being in the second row, goes in the second column. So it's kind of key to do that. All right. Now, why is it that I care so much about A and A transposed? It's just that these operations make life way easier when you start doing lots of the same types of operations on data, because that's what the reason why we have rows and columns in SPSS and in R and in MATLAB and in Excel and all of that is ideally what we want to do is we want to have operations on the rows and columns. It's just that you don't know that that's what's taking place. You just learn that that's the routine, and you put your data into these column vectors, and the row vectors represent your observations. And then slowly but surely, you point and click your way if you're in SPSS, or in R, you start asking it to do certain things. And what it's doing is it's doing operations on your data in a very specific way using matrix operations. Okay, so what is it doing? It's doing arithmetic. Everything that you're going to learn in this class is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, so if you can balance your checkbook, you're good. Or if you're like me and my wife, just make enough money where you never have to balance your checkbook. Now I don't even know how to add and subtract. Okay, so why are we doing this? Well, let me show you what happens if we do something silly. Like A plus B. Okay? When would we do A plus B? When would we do this? Well, we do it a lot when we weight variables. Addition is easy, but maybe subtraction, maybe multiplication. Okay, so I'm going to put a weird operator here. Okay, and I'm telling you that that's a weird operator because it doesn't exist. That we can do what is called element-wise operations on vectors. What does that mean? Since this one doesn't exist, I'm going to go back to one that definitely does exist, plus. And this will equal that. Okay, what does that mean? That you start with a column vector with 3 elements, and you add another column vector with 3 elements, and you get as a result a column vector with 3 elements. Okay, and what's the operation? Addition. So it's 5, 7, and 9, and that's it. Okay, pretty simple, right? You could do the same thing, and instead of having that operation, you could have that operation. Okay, so it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. addition and subtraction. These are called element-wise operations. So whatever the matrix, whatever the vectors are that you're starting with is the shape and size of the resultant. And the resultant, because you start out with a 3x1 plus a 3x1, you get a 3x1. Okay? Where it doesn't work is with element-wise operations, the vectors have to be the same. That's why I wrote a whole book on missing data. It's a problem. You can't do these operations logically when you have missing cells because there's no operation to do. You can't add something to a missing value. Nothing that comes from it. It's just missing. So they have to be of equal length. And that's what we say about vectors. Vectors have length. Okay? A vector has a length. All right. So now you've learned about element-wise operations. Okay? Now I'm going to tell you about more complicated, call it, operations, but they're not that complicated. Okay. I'm going to teach you how to use, okay? Everybody got a functional hand? At least one. You only need one. Ideally, the right hand. Okay? Everyone, make your right hand available. If you're a lefty and continue writing, that's cool. If you're artistic and probably going to be very unique in life. My son's a lefty. I'm partially lefty. I have an affinity for lefties. I like lefties. The rest of us who are righties, we're screwed. We're just like everybody else, except for lefties. You ready? You got your right hand calculator? Right hand calculator. You ready? This is what you do. You good? I'm going to practice it a few times. Really good. I'm not seeing everybody practice it, goddammit. There you go. All right. Horizontal to vertical. Horizontal to vertical. Horizontal to vertical. Okay. Why are we doing this? Because that's our calculator. You just don't know that it turns out to be the best calculator device when it comes to matrix operations. Let me show you. Now I'm going to give you a new operator. That is a dot. I took a painstaking amount of time to draw that dot just about perfectly. Okay, let's use our calculator, because I haven't shown you exactly how to use it, but I've shown you sort of how to use it. Okay, that's A, right? That's A transposed, right? Ready? I think you're ready.
That's the other way.
Wait, wrong. It starts vertical.
Yeah. First row to first column. First row to first column. Right? First row, first column. Second row, second column. Third row, third column.
Why does it end up as a column instead of a row?
RC cola. Rows. This one establishes how many rows there are. This one establishes how many columns.
So if you switch, if it's A transpose,
Yeah, so I'm going to show you where we were in error. This is the greatest part. You learn more from me making obvious errors than you do from me doing everything right. Okay? This is a cool thing. There's this guy who's been making these videos for a while, who's teaching people about physics, and he's teaching them about all these physics properties, and everyone's looking at him going, yeah, yeah. And then he says, that's wrong. What? I'm following everything. It's because everybody integrates everything into what they think they already know, and it's wrong. Okay, so this first thing, because remember, RC cola, this first one establishes how many rows there are. This one establishes how many columns they are. So immediately when you see this, you need to know there's 3 rows and 3 columns. That's why I know this is wrong. Because it has to be 3 by 3, right? Okay. How do we know what goes with what? Well, we got our calculator, right? 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, 2 times 3, 6, 3 times 1, 3, 3 times 2, 6, 3 times 3, 9. See our cool calculator? It actually works. Rows and columns. So if you take a column vector and multiply it by itself transposed, you get a matrix. You get an n by n, which just so happens because they're the same n, matrix, okay? So what we would say is A sub n, because n is the length of the vector. And you know A transposed is going to have the same number of elements because the elements don't go away, will produce an n by n matrix, okay? Make sense?
So if you multiply vectors of different lengths, as long as one's vertical and horizontal, it can be whatever size those come out to be, right? So like you can do 3 by 4 and get that.
Yep. Yep, as long as you can still, with vectors, as long as you can still do the operation. Now, with vectors, it's a lot easier. With matrices, it gets more complicated. And I'll show you why. So I started with the more complicated example. So now I'm going to go to the seemingly less complicated example, but it's slightly more complicated, I think. I don't know, because there's 2 operations that you got to do. You got to do multiplication and addition. Sorry. Again, checkbook. You can balance your checkbook. You can master this stuff. So I'm going to do one thing that's a terrible thing. Okay. A transposed, because remember A is a column vector. So when I transpose it, it becomes a row vector. So I transpose A and I put that first. Now you'll notice my calculator is now well suited for this because I take this and I turn it into this. But remember that I said that this establishes how many rows and this establishes how many columns. It's not going to be an n by n. How many rows do we have here? How many columns do we have? Yeah, so we got to fit all of this into one scalar. How do we do that? For those of you who know matrix algebra, no answer. How do we do that? Remember, this is our multiplier. This is our really cool, this is called a dot. Outer product. Product is the general term. So we take this and we go like that. And you would think, okay, if we stuck with the same analogy that we had before, it would just be 1, 4, and 9, right? Makes sense, right? But how do we fit a 1, 4, and a 9 into this? Well, you take the average? That would be a bad idea. Add them up. Because we already did our multiplication stuff. We just have to add them. So 1 plus 4, so what we do is we plus 1 plus 4 plus 9, which is 14. Okay. What's this squared? What's this squared? What's this squared? 9, yeah. And what's this whole thing?
Sum of squares.
Ha! Is that the coolest thing? What? Sums of squares. How cool is that? Now we're fitting into the stuff you already know. That the sum of squares. See, if I had told you this in 611, you'd be like, why do we do this? Well, you really don't need to know it because the computer does this for you. But now you can see that this creates a sum of squared values, but it's sum of the squared values, not of the deviations, like you know of the sum of squares, right? X minus X bar squared. But you can do that. You can easily do that because X minus X bar, the X is vector and X bar is a scalar. You can subtract a scalar from a vector, right? And then you can just square them easily by doing this operation. So sum of squares is the numerator for variance. Cool, huh? So in your first introduction to matrix algebra, you already see that there's relevance to this. Now you can also see why it's so much easier to just represent this in an equation. And I'll tell you, the typesetters have even done away with the operator, and they do that. And you'll see that more often than not. So if you weren't looking, I got rid of the dot product because the general assumption is that if you put two vectors, if it's matrix operations notation, if you put two vectors together, the assumed operation is a dot product, okay, or a dot product. That's the assumed operation. If you see something like, you know it's not a dot product, it's a Kronecker product, which I'm not going to talk about, but it's a different type of product, okay? So this simple operation required you to understand this nomenclature and a little bit of this, and you'll see a lot of this. A lot of it. You'll also, hope I erased that, but you'll see a lot of the thetas, or it'll be some other parameter, right? It'll be some like alpha, or you know, the P, the probability distribution of alpha. Or it can be of whatever, any other unobservable parameter. So you'll see these things a lot. You'll also see it in matrix operations, okay? I recommend, I only put these A's in here, okay, just for reference. But I recommend that you think in terms, at least initially, for the first year or two when I was an engineer a long time ago, the way I became familiar, much more familiar and comfortable with matrix operations is when I was reading, I would write I would do a square for a scalar, or I'd do a vertical rectangle for a column vector, or I'd do a horizontal rectangle for a row vector, and I would try to make them of equal length so it was pretty obvious. Or make them small so that you just see the operations in little tiny forms. Okay? And if you don't know the operation, come and see me, and I'll show you, because most of the operation is super simple. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Now, I'm not going to talk about determinants and any of that crap, because you, quite frankly, don't need to know those. Not for most of what we're doing. You need to understand this notation so that you understand how they're talking about the vectors, because in a good number of the readings, you can get by with probably this and maybe a little bit more here and there to understand all of the equations. There's one other thing that I got to cover. When the hell was class end? Okay, I would have stopped at here and said, shit, I gotta get going. There's one other thing that you need to understand, and that is an integral. Everybody good with this? Is that a good primer on matrix operations? Okay. And the Khan Academy has really good stuff on matrix operations if you want to learn more about different functions, different operators. But I'll tell you, so there's no division in matrix operations. Division is handled by calculating a determinant. And again, don't worry about it. We don't do division. We do addition, subtraction, and multiplication, and combinations thereof. The one thing we definitely want to know is we want to know areas under curves. Why? Because this is what we call a cumulative probability density function distribution. Cumulative probability because when you start here, this area here, the area underneath the curve represents a portion of the 1.0 area under this whole curve. Okay? Now, the area under the curve is considered to be 1. Okay? That's what we call the law of total probability. Is that when you take all the probabilities together and you assemble them under one density function, under one roof, there's only one family. Okay? And that one family can be divided up into portions. Okay? And what portions they are come from these slices of these weird looking shapes. Now, think about it. If we were dealing with a triangle, life is good. We know how to figure out areas of triangles, right? Especially if we, like that. You all learn this. I know some of you are having flashbacks like, shit, I went into psychology, so I didn't have to think about triangles. Don't worry, we're only going to be thinking about rectangles. Let me get rid of the triangle to alleviate some of the PTSD symptoms. Clearly arose from that. We're going to think about rectangles, okay? Now, what happens when you have this little bit of area under the curve that you need to figure out? Well, so a lot of people will say something like the probability that theta is less than 2 is equal to the integral, see Smith, of theta from negative infinity to of p theta d theta. Okay. So that's what they'll write. You'll look at that and you'll say, what the fuck is that? Okay. It's simple. This is minus infinity, someplace over here. And this is 2. What 2 represents? There's some On this x-axis, there's an infinite number of values. 2 is right here. Okay? And I want to know the probability that the parameter of interest is going to be less than 2. Okay. And so the way we discuss this is we talk about integrals. Okay? Integral. Read this thing, this big S, and I apologize for my shitty handwriting, but it typically looks like that. Sometimes I have little curly cute things. It looks quite cute. But that's what it looks like. And when you see that, think area. Okay? All we're interested in doing is figuring out this space here. If you want, think of, you're trying to calculate how much carpet or how much paint you need. Okay? So you're just trying to figure out that surface area. That's it. We use integrals when we have a defined function. That's why calculus is really useful. Yeah.
So that's no point estimate here? So that's no point estimate here, but a probability density function?
Yeah, there's going to be a probability density function, and I'll tell you more about that later. But yes, there's because this is not defined. It can't be. It's in calculus, it's defined, but in statistics, there's a probability density function associated with even this area under the curve because of errors of estimation and all that. Okay. If we were only going to do this in calculus, yeah, I would change this too. So what Patrick is saying is, shouldn't that be this? And the answer is yes, if we were dealing only with calculus. Okay. And more often than not, what you'll see is this. Right? Is that this probability density function is approximated by the integral of p theta between minus infinity and 2. That's a 2 up there. And that just tells you the range of what you're integrating. Okay. Now, so when you see this integral sign, think paint, wall space, area. Okay, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to do this. Now I'm going to show you why we don't use integrals, but we represent what we're communicating to one another with integrals. Now we can use integrals, but computers, they don't do calculus. You know what they do? They do Riemann sums. They do shortcuts. What are those shortcuts? Well, now you're going to have flashbacks. If you ever had calculus, you'll have flashbacks to, oh, that's why I learned that. Okay, what did you learn? You learned about this idea of series. When you heard series, you're like, fuck, I hated that section. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. But today you will. It's really simple. We don't know, like if, okay, it's like Cookie Monster or Blob or Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Okay, it's all over the place. And we just want to know the area. Now we know that the total area under this curve is 1, right? Law of total probability. Here's what we do. Because we're smart. And so on, because I'm bored. Okay, everybody see that? We create these little unit width rectangles. Okay, unit width rectangles. Why? Because if it's a unit width, you multiply it by the height, that's the area, right? That's great. We want unit width. So it's 1 times wherever the height is, gives us the area. We make these little tiny rectangles, and then we calculate this area, this area, this area, this area, this area. And then we just add them up. We're done. Computers, really good at that. Integrals, really bad at that. Not so good. Computers do addition and subtraction really well. They're marginal at multiplication and division, but addition and subtraction, top notch. This is what it does, is it calculates all of these things and it adds them up, and then it gives us this area. And that area under the curve represents the probability that p theta will be less than 2. Okay, it gives us this area under the curve to provide us with some sort of estimate for the distribution of this probability. Okay, now Patrick's question was, why isn't this a point estimate? Is because this method is fallible. So in Bayesian statistics, you use lots of different ways in which you calculate this. And that's called a Gibbs sampler or Metropolis Hastings. Yeah.
So where did we get the 2 from? Why isn't it the probability of theta less or equal 1 or less or equal than 1?
Oh, I just made it up. Why did I select 2?
Well, how can it be anything more than 1? Because I thought that.
Oh, different parameters. This is the x-axis, and it's some value that can range from minus infinity to positive infinity.
Really standard deviation.
This here, the area is only 1. So these are the actual values of the thing I'm representing by the distribution. Yeah. But the area under the curve, like under this guy, it has to be 1. Right? Make sense? So integrals, think area. Think area under the curve. Anytime you see that, immediately you should see, well, what area are they talking about? Well, they're talking about from the lowest end to some value. Okay? Make sense? Yeah.
If you weren't using negative infinity and were using a defined area,
Yep.
would you get a point estimate then instead, or would it still be a distribution?
Well, as long as you said that it was between and inclusive of this. So if you said something to the effect of, no, can't do that. Flip them around. Yeah, I was going to do that, but right, yeah, something like that. If you did that, then it's this thing that's critical, right? Because it allows you to make them equal to those. So then you just calculate the area that includes both 1 and 0 and in between. And that's really a point estimate. Anytime you have that, but it becomes an estimand when you do that, right? Because what do you mean? Is it 0.999999999, or is it only 0.9? Yeah. So like, at what point do you say that it's not 1? Right. That's where it's more of a hypothetical, and that's where the distribution comes in. Yeah. Okay. So I promised a wee bit of linear algebra and a wee bit of calculus. That was it. And the rest of it should be a little bit clearer. Okay, we have 1 minute. Aziz, you want to make an announcement or make a mention of Barry?
Sure, yeah. There's a great resource, the Barry book. If anyone wants to just let me know.
Yeah, this Barry book, we have it scanned in, but I was asked not to distribute it. This book is fantastic. This book is great, but it's $150 and it has nothing to do with art. So when people use it, it was written in when, the 80s or something like that? I can't remember. It's an awesome book, but all of the exercises are on floppy disk, which I don't have a floppy disk reader anymore, and in Minitab. So not so useful for R, but several of us have tried fairly successfully in converting a lot of the exercises into R exercises. I'd recommend you taking a look at that. If you're interested, Aziz will make it available. Please go and talk to him for free. Not for, I just can't distribute it to you guys.
If you wanna pay me, I don't mind.
Yeah, or you can pay Aziz. Apparently, he has a price. All right, well, thanks. I hope you've been entertained, reasonably, educated. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that. I don't have a pen. Oh. And this is just my signature right here?
I've exported.
Yeah. Drop that class. Oh, usually Thursday I like to.
It was harder to read.
And I gotta count on number of chairs. You got 32 chairs.
Hey, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm with Kayla, yeah, Tata.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, John.